The red bulb above the console gives off a low, steady hum, tinting the narrow compartment in dull crimson. Condensation beads along the metal casing of the transmitter, catching the light as the ship lifts and settles in a long swell. The hull answers with a slow creak. He shifts in his chair and adjusts the headphones against his ears, pressing the cracked rubber cups tighter to block the draft slipping through the bulkhead seams. Static fills the line, uneven and restless. He turns the tuning knob a fraction, then back again, listening for separation that never comes. The air smells faintly of oil and damp wool. Cold presses into his fingers where they rest on the desk. His shoulders hold the stiffness of the previous watch. It will be a long 4 hours, he thinks, as the ship rolls once more beneath him. The ocean makes itself known through impact. A heavy strike travels up from below the waterline, through steel, into the soles of his boots. The compartment tilts in a slow lateral sway, then shudders as the hull meets the next swell. He braces one hand flat against the desk, feeling the vibration pass through the metal into his palm. Salt has dried along the seams of his canvas gloves, stiffening the fabric. Even so, his fingertips remain numb. Static breathes in and out inside the headphones, rising and thinning without pattern. He turns his head slightly toward the black porthole. In it, his own face floats faintly in the red light, drawn and colorless. He lowers his eyes and makes another time mark in the log, pencil moving in careful strokes despite the motion. His jaw tightens without his noticing. "Bad duty," they said, as the ship leans again into the dark. He lifts one earphone away from his head, letting it hang against his collar. The compartment changes at once. The absence of static feels heavier than the noise itself. The red light hums faintly overhead. Air moves through a seam near the bulkhead, carrying a thin smell of damp steel. Above him, boots cross the deck in measured steps, then fade. A pipe answers with a hollow knock each time the ship rolls. Farther below, something shifts with a dull thud as cargo settles deeper into its lashings. He swallows and feels the dryness in his throat. He presses the cracked rubber cup back over his ear and adjusts the fit. Static returns, uneven but constant. His eyes settle again into the dim red glow. Nothing changes. That is the danger, as he resumes his watch. A faint tone brushes the edge of the static, thin as a thread pulled through cloth. He stiffens and leans forward, bringing his face closer to the panel. The signal meter trembles slightly, though it may only be the ship's motion. His thumb rests on the warm bakelite knob, and he turns it a fraction, careful not to overcorrect. The tone fades. It returns for a breath, then dissolves again into the restless wash. The hull dips into a slow trough, and the compartment tilts forward. He steadies himself with his elbow against the desk, eyes narrowing to read the small printed numbers around the dial. His pulse climbs in his neck, measured and deliberate. He stops turning the knob and listens without moving. Was that real, he wonders, as the ship settles and the static closes in again. He closes his eyes for a moment and replays the last few seconds, holding the memory in place as if it were still sounding. The tone had weight, he thinks. Or perhaps it was only a thinning in the noise. He opens his eyes and looks at the logbook. The page waits, blank beneath the last entry. He keeps the pencil lifted, then lowers it without writing. The wristwatch at his side ticks faintly, steady against the low groan of hull plates flexing with each swell. His fingers tremble slightly as he shifts the pencil again. He makes a small mark in the margin, barely more than a scratch. Graphite smudges under his thumb. He draws a shallow breath and holds it, listening harder now, as if pressure alone might force the signal back into the static. If I miss it, someone pays, he thinks, while the ship continues its slow roll. Minutes pass without variation. Static presses evenly against his ears, unbroken and indifferent. He becomes aware of his own breathing and begins to count without meaning to 4 in, 4 out until the numbers lose shape. The ship moves in a slow, repetitive sway, lifting and settling with patient force. He shifts in his chair and straightens his back, feeling the stiffness along his lower spine. The damp wool of his collar rubs against his neck each time he adjusts. Beside the console, a small calendar hangs pinned at the corner, its page unmoving in the still air. He rests his hands flat on the desk and listens for change that does not come. The sea does not care who listens, he thinks, as the static continues and the ocean keeps its own silence. He lifts his hands from the desk and flexes his fingers one by one, watching them as if they belong to someone else. The skin near his knuckles has cracked, pale lines against reddened flesh. They respond slowly, stiff at the joints. He rubs them together, creating a faint rasp of dry skin, then settles the headphones more firmly over his ears. Wind scrapes across the superstructure above, a thin, steady drag that carries through the steel. At the edge of the vent near the ceiling, frost gathers in a narrow line. He places his fingertips back on the metal desk and feels a deeper cold than before, as if it has moved inward. A dull ache settles into his joints. He turns the dial, slower than usual, noticing the delay between thought and motion. He has stopped registering the temperature as something separate from himself. Stay awake, he thinks, and listens again. His chin dips toward his chest without warning. He corrects at once, drawing his head back upright, the headphones shifting slightly against his temples. The static has flattened into a steady sheet of noise, without edges. He blinks hard, but his eyes continue to burn in the dim red light. The chair legs scrape against the deck as he pushes himself up. Leather boots, damp along the seams, grip the shifting floor. A heavier roll passes through the hull, tilting the compartment just enough to force him to widen his stance. For a moment, a brief dizziness rises behind his eyes, then recedes. He flexes his knees, stamping once to bring feeling back into his feet, and reaches for the back of the chair to steady himself. Not yet. Not on watch, he thinks, as he lowers himself slowly to sit again. He lowers himself into the chair more carefully than before, feeling the stiffness along his thighs as he bends. The tabletop carries a slight vibration from the engines, a constant hum beneath the static. The red bulb overhead flickers once, then steadies, casting the same narrow wash across the instruments. He picks up the pencil and makes another entry. His handwriting has grown tighter, letters compressed as if conserving space. The static presses harder in his ears, though he knows the volume has not changed. He reaches up and turns the knob down a fraction, listens, then restores it to where it was. Cold has moved into his knees now, settling there without urgency. His muscles tighten and release on their own. For hours is a long stretch, he thinks, and continues to listen. A hand taps the frame of the radio room door, and he is relieved for a short interval. He steps into the passageway, then climbs the ladder to the deck. The hatch opens, and wind strikes without restraint, carrying the sharp smell of salt and fuel. It cuts across the deck in steady force, flattening his coat against his ribs. Spray lifts and settles, leaving salt along his eyelashes. He blinks it away and grips the railing. Ahead, a faint stern light holds steady at measured distance, then dips as the ship ahead disappears behind a rise of black water. Other shapes move in the dark, barely distinct from the sea. His legs feel unsteady under the open sky, the cold sharper here than below. He says nothing, only watches the dim light reappear. They are up there too, he thinks, as the wind moves past him and the convoy continues. He keeps one hand on the wet railing, feeling the chill of it through his glove. The horizon is a single, unbroken line of black, sea and sky indistinguishable. Ships move within it at measured intervals, their presence marked only by dim lights and darker silhouettes rising and falling together in a low, synchronized swell. He looks toward the nearest shape and imagines men below its deck plates. Some stretched on narrow bunks. Some bent over gauges and dials as he had been. Cargo sits stacked in sealed holds, timber and steel resting in darkness. The wind moves steadily past his ears, flattening all other sound. Cold air tightens his chest as he draws breath. His thoughts slow, settling into the rhythm of the convoy's motion. If one falls silent, we all hear it, he thinks, before turning back toward the ladder that leads below. He steps back through the hatch and down the ladder, the air growing thicker and warmer with each rung. Inside the compartment, the red light feels smaller than before, contained and dim after the open deck. The engine's vibration runs continuously through the deck plates and into his boots. He closes the door and sits, his damp sleeve brushing the edge of the console. The logbook lies open to a blank line. He settles the headphones over his ears, adjusting them until the fit is firm. Static resumes at once, steady and unbroken. His hands tremble slightly as he reaches for the dial. His eyelids feel heavier now, as if the wind has taken something from him. The convoy is no longer an idea beyond the hull. It feels near. He lowers his eyes to the instruments and tells himself to listen carefully. A faint pulse rises within the static, spaced just enough to suggest intention. He leans forward at once, holding his breath so it will not interfere. The earphones sit warm against his cold skin, sealing out the low creak of the hull beneath the swell. On the panel, the needle trembles, though the motion may belong to the sea. He turns the dial one fraction at a time, thumb and forefinger moving with care. The pulse sharpens, then thins, then disappears into the wash. He waits. It returns for 2 beats, then dissolves again. His jaw tightens until his teeth press together. Thoughts begin to fragment, breaking into small pieces of attention: meter, tone, breathing, deck vibration. He lifts the pencil, then stops before the page. Is it there, he asks himself, and keeps listening as the ship moves steadily onward. He reaches for the switch and presses it down. It clicks under his finger, a small sound against the constant rush in his ears. The indicator light glows steady. He speaks into the microphone, keeping his words minimal, describing what he heard without claiming more than that. His voice sounds flatter than he expects. There is a pause. Only the wind striking the hull answers at first, a low pressure against steel. Heat rises along his neck despite the cold in the room. His shoulders lock as he waits. A brief acknowledgement comes through, neither alarmed nor dismissive. He releases the switch and lets it spring back. If I am wrong, they will know, he thinks, settling the headphones more firmly and returning to the static as if it might clarify itself. Minutes pass in measured silence. The rolling cadence of the ship remains steady, lifting and settling without interruption. No confirmation arrives from the bridge. The static continues unchanged, neither sharpening nor thinning. He keeps the headphones in place and stares at the panel as if it might shift under scrutiny. His eyes drift to the logbook. The small mark in the margin sits alone. He runs his finger over it and feels the slight indentation left by the pencil. The graphite has pressed deeper than he intended. In the porthole, a dim reflection of his face moves with the swell. A faint nausea rises from the tension in his chest. Mental fog thickens, dulling the edge of his certainty. Did I imagine it, he wonders, as he returns his hand to the dial and listens again. His footsteps echo between the aircraft, a measured rhythm across the concrete floor. The torch in his hand casts a narrow beam that travels along aluminum skin, revealing rivet lines and dull paint. Cold metal reflects the light in brief flashes before returning to shadow. Above, aircraft hang suspended in the dim hangar, fixed in permanent angles of climb. Dust rests undisturbed on wings and propellers. The air smells faintly of oil and old fabric, held in place by the soft hum of distant ventilation. He pauses beside one fuselage and runs the back of his knuckles lightly against it, feeling the stored chill. There is a familiar stiffness in his knees as he resumes walking, the same route he follows each night. Routine weariness settles across his shoulders. Nothing moves here, he thinks, as the beam advances ahead of him into the quiet. He raises the torch toward the cockpit as part of his usual sweep. The beam climbs the narrow frame of glass and settles inside, illuminating the instrument panel and the canvas seat straps hanging slack. The air in the hangar remains still, suspended and unmoving. For a brief moment, the light catches a shape where the seat should be empty. A suggestion of shoulders. The outline of a helmet. A glint where goggles might rest. He stops walking. The beam trembles slightly in his hand. A tightening grips his chest as he fixes the light on the figure. He blinks once, then again, and shifts his stance to steady himself. The shape resolves into shadow and canvas. The straps hang as before. The seat is bare. He lowers the torch a fraction, then lifts it back into place, questioning his eyesight. Was someone there, he asks himself, while the hangar holds its silence. He lowers the torch until the beam rests on the floor, then lifts it again in a slow, deliberate arc. Dust motes cross the light in thin currents. The cockpit remains unchanged, canvas straps slack, instrument panel dark, glass reflecting only the narrow beam. He stands without moving, listening. The hangar offers no reply. Rows of silent aircraft extend into shadow, wings fixed in place, tires resting squarely on the concrete. The soft hum of ventilation continues, steady and indifferent. A slight tremor moves through his hand before he steadies it against his thigh. His mind replays the image with precise detail, the helmet shape, the suggestion of goggles. Perhaps the light shifted, he thinks. He lowers the torch and resumes his patrol between the waiting machines. He moves through the hangar more slowly than usual, the beam of his flashlight lingering on surfaces it would normally pass without pause. The metal casing grows warm in his palm. He keeps his path wide of the cockpit for a time, choosing the outer row of aircraft instead. A darkened insignia rests along one wing, paint dulled by years indoors. The building gives a distant creak, a small shift in its frame that travels faintly through the rafters. His breathing has not quite settled, it rises and falls unevenly as he walks. Alertness has replaced his earlier routine weariness. He does not call to a colleague or make a note in any log. The image remains precise in his mind, fixed in place. Someone once sat there, he thinks, as the light moves ahead of him across silent aluminum. He stops beside another aircraft and lets the beam travel slowly across its side. Scratches run along the aluminum, paint faded to a dull finish. A tail number sits faint in the dim light, edges softened by time. He steps closer and angles the torch into the cockpit. The cracked leather seat edge shows where weight once pressed it down. He rests his hand lightly against the fuselage. The metal feels colder than the air in the hangar should allow. The air itself remains unmoving, held in place beneath the high ceiling. He stands there longer than the patrol requires, studying the worn surfaces and fixed controls. A chill moves through him despite the shelter indoors. They were young once, he thinks, lowering the torch slightly as the hangar holds its quiet around him. He sits at a small desk in a quiet room, decades removed from the sea. The paper rests flat beneath his steady hand. There is no wind striking steel now, only silence held within the walls. He adjusts his glasses and lowers the pen to the page, writing the words "bad duty" in careful script. His fingers are stiff with age, joints slow to respond as they once were in the cold. He pauses between sentences, allowing memory to surface at its own pace. The first thing that returns is the temperature, the way it moved through gloves and into bone. Then he recalls the sound that may not have existed, the thin pulse inside the static. He does not write of distinction or drama. Only the long hours, the red light, the steady roll. It was rough. Very rough, he notes, as the pen continues across the page. He sets the pen down and rubs his thumb along the side of his finger, as if feeling again the faint pencil scar that once pressed into a logbook page. A dim lamp casts a narrow circle of light across the desk. Beyond it, the room remains in shadow. The house settles with a soft shift in the walls, a quiet reminder of the hour. He leans back slightly and lets the memory return without forcing it. He wonders if he truly heard the signal or shaped it from fatigue and cold. He recalls marking the log, the small indentation left behind. He recalls the pause before the reply came through, measured and restrained. A mild ache moves across his chest, not sharp, only present. He does not know if anything followed that moment. I did what I could, he thinks, and sits quietly as the night holds around him. One sits in a narrow compartment, gloved hand resting on metal that carries the ship's slow sway. Static moves steadily through his headphones, rising and falling without shape. Beyond the hull, the ocean remains black, indistinguishable from the sky. He keeps his posture upright, listening for what may or may not be there. The other stands in a dark hangar, palm against the cold skin of an aircraft. The air does not move. No engine hum, no wind. Only the faint echo of his own breathing and the distant hum of ventilation. He studies the cockpit glass and sees only reflection. Cold is remembered in one body and present in the stiffness of knees in the other. Both remain alone with preserved machinery. Neither fully trusts what he perceives. Holds steady, each thinks in his own way, and continues the watch. Time separates them by decades, but the hour feels the same. One stands beneath a sky without light, breath visible in the cold air as it leaves his mouth and disappears. Steel surrounds him, surfaces unchanged by his presence. The horizon offers nothing back. The other stands beneath a high roof, facing an empty cockpit framed in glass. The seat remains unoccupied, straps hanging where they were left. Silence holds steady between the aircraft, uninterrupted and complete. The machines endure in their fixed forms. The men who operated them do not. Each man feels the weight of what has passed through his hands. Acceptance settles quietly, without gesture. Someone once stood here, he thinks, whether at sea or beneath a wing, and the watch continues without announcement. A knock sounds against the radio room door, firm but not urgent. He turns his head and answers with a brief acknowledgement. Relief has come. The ship continues its slow roll beneath him, unchanged by the shift in watch. He reaches up and lifts the headphones from his ears. The static drops away at once, leaving a faint ringing in its place. A warm indent lingers against the side of his head where the rubber pressed for hours. He rubs the spot once, then sets the headset carefully on the console. He stands, feeling a sudden heaviness move through his limbs now that the task has passed. The narrow steel passageway outside waits in dim light. Deep fatigue settles into his shoulders as he steps through the doorway. Another watch survived, he thinks, as the door closes softly behind him. He completes his final round along the outer wall, letting the beam of the torch pass once more over wing edges and landing gear. The vast hangar stretches in shadow beyond the narrow circle of light. Satisfied, he lowers the torch and clicks it off. Darkness settles evenly across the aircraft, erasing their surfaces from view. He walks toward the exit, footsteps measured against the concrete. At the door, he fits the cold brass key into the lock and turns it until it catches. The sound carries briefly, then fades. Silence holds inside the building, undisturbed. He draws a slow breath before stepping outside and closing the door behind him. Ordinary tiredness rests in his limbs. Morning will come, he thinks, as he pockets the key and moves into the night.